while I'm finishing getting this set up, and then Qui will begin. So go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Berman. I'm the dramaturg for She Kills Monsters. So I guess we can just start by like open response to the play. What grabbed you? What was this experience for you guys? Anybody in the audience? Yeah, sure.
It was probably the most fun I've had with theater for a long time.
Sure.
For a good amount of time.
Yeah.
What about it, if you don't mind? I mean, yeah, but okay, she's a student of mine, so it's a conversation we have all the time.
I think it was it was clear that, to put it simply, like, I was vicariously living through them and the amount of fun that they were having, and the game aspect of it, and all the references to the 90s, and it just had a lot of fun with itself, and it knew that. It wasn't like a comedy to like have witticisms and stuff like that. It was self-aware of how fun it was, and so then I had fun. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah,
that's great. Any other gut reactions to the play? Yeah.
The lights went out at the end and I started crying.
Oh, interesting.
So,
what's up with that?
well, I've been, I just blanked on her name. Tilly. I've been Tilly for a long time. And just seeing how goofy and how fun that all the fun that they had. And then it, like, I'm laughing and then suddenly I'm crying. And it just hit me in a really personal place.
I think that one of the things that Qui talks about is that, and I think I put this in the portion of the interview that's in the program, like his theater company, the kind of theater he makes, has what he likes to call a secret mission, which is really, really fun all the time, and then also underneath exactly what you're talking about.
Something that's really important to the Vampire Cowboys is presenting, which is Quis company in New York, is presenting superheroes from people that you don't typically see getting to be superheroes, and sort of putting a new face on what it means to be a hero. Awesome. Great. Maybe one more reaction before we get Qui coming in to talk.
That's a good sound.
I felt compelled to get up there and fight with them. I felt that not only was I living vicariously, I was there with them.
Hey, Qui, what's up? How's it going?
Hi.
So, I'm going to make you big screen. Hold on 1 second.
Okay.
Hold it for me for a second.
Yeah.
So, you can see me right now, but let's see if I can turn you around so you can see the audience. Hold on 1 second. Hold on. I'm trying not to unplug things as I go.
Say hi, audience.
Hey.
So, I'm here with Phil. Say hi, Phil. Phil Berman. And here we all are, and we are ready to talk to you, man. How's it going?
It's going good, man. This is a little weird. I'm not gonna lie.
It is. It's a little bit weird. It's okay though. We'll work through it. So we're here with the audience who just saw your show, and one of the things that we were just talking about right before we connected up with you was some first reactions from the audience, just like immediately following the play. And one person said it was sort of the most fun they've had in the theater recently. And another person said that that she really identified with Tilly, that she's been Tilly for a long time. As soon as the lights went down at the end of the play, that she found herself crying. And I know that that's something you and I talked about. It's sort of like the juxtaposition of the heights of feeling in the play. Can you talk a little bit about sort of what's your mission as a playwright? I mean, you've got your own company, so that's awesome.
Right.
And you do geek theater, which is awesome. But you and I, before this moment, talked a little bit about like the kind of theater you try and make in general. Can you say a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, I try to always make shows where I'm always out to make characters for people, superheroes for people who don't usually see themselves in those roles. So I tend to that's something I'm always trying to build and create. And as you know, aesthetically, I'm always trying to kind of keep people on their toes so they don't know what to expect next. So I try to stay unpredictable as possible when I'm writing shows. Hopefully that came through with She Kills Monsters. And I'm there to have fun, but I think the heart and soul of everything that I do, I tell this. The secret to what I do with Vampire Cowboys is we do crazy downtown theater, but the heart and soul of it is still character and plot. And so I think people are always like surprised that they're like, oh, I felt something for a thing where there was a dragon in it. Like, dragons can, elicit emotion.
So you came to playwriting through slightly unconventional ways. Can you talk about sort of your development as an artist a little bit, like how you got to where you are now?
Well, I like a lot of theater people. I started off as a wannabe actor, and I discovered that I couldn't do any Asian accent whatsoever, which kind of limited my ability to act. In mid-95, all the roles that wanted someone that looked like this needed someone that could do better than a hop-sing accent, and that's probably the extent of which I could do. And so that was kind of my avenue that that's how I kind of ran into theater. But I started off as a fight director, is actually where my background really began, and so that's why all my shows have this really strong fighting element. I also taught female self-defense for a long time, so that's probably that along with my wife and my mom being the impetus for why I have so many female leads for all my shows, and I kind of got into theater because I think I was a failed actor who wanted to write roles for himself, and then I started writing roles that were too complex for myself to act in, and so I decided to just give up on trying to act at all. Way better trained than myself.
So you have a long, deep history in fight choreography, fight direction, not just in your own sort of personal practice, but also in your artistic practice. What is it? And I know that most of your plays have that element to them. What is it about the storytelling of like the physical nature of fight choreography that feels so innately theatrical to you?
Well, I like to tell, as I tell people, the reason why I'm super attracted when people are like, oh, you like seeing your productions, and I tend to always love going to see my plays. I'm like any playwright, I get nervous when the words aren't correct and or people are ad-libbing, but the places where I really love sitting and watching is always fun, because to me that's the poetry of what I do, is how I tell stories, through punching people really hard, and how other people tell stories by violence, because I think that we all tell it different. Like as the actors and directors on this can attest, the stage directors really, they fight and the scene keeps going. It's not like I describe the fight at all.
Right.
So it really gives a lot of leeway for a lot of like physical discovery, because those fights really do change the momentum and the feel of the show. So I love letting that's my collaborative spirit to artists beyond myself. So.
I think that that's actually a really notable thing in your work, because I think that there might be an expectation from people who would meet your plays and be interested in them because they have such a strong physical component to them, that they would open the script and see the long description of like, this happens and then this person hits that person and then this happens. When I first read the plays, I was really struck by how open that is. And I know that you work a lot of times with your own company, but those plays are now running out into the world without you. So what is, for you, what's one of the most interesting things about other people taking on these plays that have been originally designed for a group of collaborators with whom you might be more familiar?
I think it's actually strangely the technical element that's always interesting to see, because not particularly this play, I actually have like more traditional scenes in it, but a lot of my plays have what I just write cut to, because I'm just too lazy to set up the scene one, because I always ultimately when I move things around, I forget what number it is. So if you're reading my script, you'll notice like, oh, there's scene 1, scene 7, scene 3, because I'm literally moving things around. And because I got tired of trying to do that math, I just write cut to. But I'm actually implying that there is no scene change time. Like it all has to be fluid, and to watch people, how creative they've been on trying to translate things like that on the more cinematic side of what I'm doing. Because for Vampire Cowboys, we've had, we've been doing it for years, and we have all our shortcuts, and when I start to write, everyone's like, oh, this is what Qui means. They know right away.
Right.
But I forget that when it's out in the world, no one knows what the heck I'm talking about. I often get like, what? Do you know that this is impossible? Like, actually, it's not. I'm not because I'm a jerk.
So you brought up the term cinematic, and I think that one of the things about your plays in general that I really respond to is that notion of quick cutting, which is, I think, a very cinematic tool, but you very clearly choose not to write these things for screen. You write them for the stage. So for you, what is the power of having sort of cinematic techniques, but have them accomplished in a very theatrical way?
I think it's funny. You know, because the truth is, like, as I always tell people, like, I'll put a spaceship battle on stage, and like I'll put it in a script. And if I were to do it on a film, like I'm gonna like spend a lot of money, and I'm gonna make it as realistic as possible. And, you know, you're gonna see things blow up. And you're not gonna necessarily laugh at it, but if I put it on stage, as awesome as it is, there's something innately hysterical about the fact that you have grown adults that are really well trained pretending to be in spaceships. And you know, like I'm sure. I mean, I haven't seen the fights on this. But I'm sure that at some point you're like, oh my God, this girl is fighting a gigantic puppet dragon. We're adults and we're clapping at it. and there's something just fun about that, because to me, theater is about play, and that's why I like writing for the theater. I like being part of that. It's also it's a medium that I can react to what's around me a lot faster than, say, film or television. Like I write a screenplay, like it's going to be years before, I've written many screenplays and they're still hanging out in the ethers in many production companies, right? Whereas, this play, I literally wrote it, I think I wrote it in August and we produced it 2 months later.
Yeah.
So that turnaround happens so quickly, and that's what makes it so fun. It can be immediate, and that's what I like about it. And also, it's just, as I always say, if you're going to do a big action movie, you need all the money in the world. Otherwise, it's going to look like crap. It's going to be a B movie, and everyone's not going to take it seriously. If I'm going to do it on stage, the limitation is the limits of the audience imagination, and that's infinite. So thusly, I can do a lot more without having to, I can make an epic space battle with a couple of chairs and funny hats. But I can't do that on screen. And so that it's really freeing to do that on stage. I'm surprised that not more people do that.
Yeah. So I mentioned right before we called you in, I was mentioning your company's secret mission. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, the secret mission of Vampire Cowboys, the one that we don't advertise that people figure it out, is we're aggressively diverse. Because of that, as I said, I'm always writing superheroes for people who don't necessarily see themselves in those roles in like Hollywood blockbusters and things like that. And so it's also because my primary audience is the geeks, I'm always trying to help expand what they see as a superhero. Like, in my play Soul Samurai, like the lead character was a Filipino lesbian who killed vampires. And ultimately, like, if after they leave it, that kind of just, tweaks how they see it, expands and broadens their horizons on how they can see a hero. I think it just gives more opportunities for other people to do those roles. And especially for the person who sits there and is like, I am a Filipino lesbian, I've never seen that role before. It allows them to have a superhero that looks like them. Hey man, I'm an Asian kid who grew up in Arkansas. Like, that's something I've always longed for, to see someone like me, talk like me. And though I love Bruce Lee, he didn't walk around with a southern twang. So, it's a very specific thing that I'm trying to do. And I know there's a lot of people who don't have it, so there's a lot more work to be done. So that's what's so fun about writing plays.
Awesome. I'd love to open this up for questions or comments from the audience, and we also have some of our actors and creative staff in the audience, so you guys are welcome to throw in questions, etc., if you'd like. Let's like to open it up. Anybody wanna be first? Yeah, Rob. So this is Rob who's about to talk, and he is our fight director for this play. So go ahead.
So Qui, you mentioned well-trained actors. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the experience of your company and the actors you bring in, and what the fight training is like for them. If they have a lot of previous experience working with you, or if you bring some people from kind of ground zero up to where you're going to be for the production.
Great. I'm going to restate the question just to make sure everybody can hear it and that we can hear it. So Rob was asking about, at Vampire Cowboys, the level of training for the actors in terms of their experience with fight choreography. Are you working with people who are really experienced, or are you also working with people who have no experience and you're sort of training them up? What's that like for you guys?
99% of the time, every actor that comes on to Vampire Cowboys has never done a fight.
Wow.
And at this point, 10 years down the line, most of them have done a lot of fights with us.
Yeah.
But almost everyone that has come on board as an actor. Like we were like, you are the best person for this role.
Yeah.
And the advantage I have as being the fight director and the playwright is I can always build the fight and the show around. Like, oh, they suck at this fight. I'm gonna cut that scene completely. Or
right.
and that's an easy thing for me. I can always change. I mean, for other fight directors, it's harder because they can't only go, well, can you use a bazooka here? Because they can't punch.
Right.
I can actually do that, and
right.
that just makes it easier for me in Vampire Cowboys. And as the years have gone by, they've all become fighters because of, you kind of have to do with Vampire Cowboys. But yeah, it always starts, we always cast them by actor first. I used to do movement auditions. I finally gave up on it because I realized it really, for me, it didn't do much. So I was just like, just give me the best. I wanted my director to be happy with who he casted. And
yeah.
then I was like, man, I'm a professional fight teacher as well, so I can teach them whatever I need them to do. And first show is always the hardest. Third show, it's like they've been doing fights their whole lives.
Right.
So it's always, you're always juggling different skill sets. As I said, when I work on a commercial show, no one ever asked me to come in for an audition to watch actors.
Right.
So I'm like, if that's how I have to deal with, off-Broadway, those kind of gigs, I have to do the same thing.
Awesome.
And plus, it's just fun to teach people.
Right. I mean, I think that I will speak on behalf of the cast for a second, but I know that that we had a lot of processing around learning the fights, and that it was awesome. Like, to see people learn those fights was really great. So I think your philosophy feels like it works, not just for you guys, but I think for your plays when they're out in the world.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, it kind of, it's like going through a boot camp every
right.
time you do a show. And so it kind of, it's like everyone becomes good friends because it's like being on a sports team, right? Like if you're sweating and you're looking ugly in front of each other, you end up liking each other because you're like, man, you just see me throw up a little bit. So, I think I can kiss you, man.
Other questions or comments is also okay too. Yeah.
Do you take the same approach with the puppetry?
Great question. So same question, but as applied to the puppetry.
The puppetry?
Yeah.
Oh, the puppetry is the same exact thing, except for we have our own staff puppet guy who literally came on board because he sent me an email with the title "Vampire Cowboys Need Puppets." And I was like, well, you can do puppets? Come on down. I'm like, and that's what he did. He was like, I'm gonna make Jesus a puppet. I'm like, awesome. And then he's been doing stuff with Vampire Cowboys ever since. And because of that, he knows I'm a fight director. I know he wants to put himself as a puppet maker. So we spent years kind of creating fight puppets, basically, puppets we could punch, hit, see how they move. So it's just been the same kind of organic thing of me figuring out how fights can become a stronger storytelling tool. He's doing the same thing with puppetry in the sense of how can you make them more violent on stage.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that you and I talked about outside of this moment was about the role of designers at Vampire Cowboys and how central that is. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that what makes us a little unique, I mean, for New York theater anyways, like, you think about the young companies or companies that come together, they tend to be a company of actors.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, we were a company of designers. It was a director and a scene designer, a costume designer, a puppet designer, a multimedia designer, myself as a fight director and a playwright, and we all came together, and we are the core of our company. If you go to our thing, we have a lot of actors that come in and out, but the group that's been the same for 10 years has been the design team and myself. So, and because of that, we've helped push each other. We know each other's shorthand, and it's easy because we're never starting on that first moment of kind of like, oh, I'm trying to impress you with something, because we're not trying to impress each other. We know when someone's slacking at this point.
Yeah.
And in a strange way, that's a pressure to do better. do push moves. I was like, if I do a fight, and they're like, dude, you've done that exact fight like 2 shows ago. Like, stop trying to weasel in that capoeira. Then I'm just like, okay, I really need to maybe watch some YouTube and figure out a new fight style. I admit I stole from YouTube. And then I go in and I put it in, and hopefully no one realizes I'm just doing on over and over.
Other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah. Phil Berman, our dramaturg, has a question.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my question is about the role of film in your work and just how media has impacted you in your life and how that shows up in the work that you create.
Well, I mean, obviously film has impacted a lot in the sense that I'm always stealing like attributes from movies. Like you can literally see the Josh Whedon influence and the Tarantino influences and all those on top of it. Going specifically on how we use multimedia inside the shows kind of comes from the fact that I kind of write without any kind of sense of like, oh, maybe this scene change should happen here, because like I do a lot of stuff where I'm not really caring how it's going to physically happen. Because of that, a lot of our movies kind of came out of necessity with Vampire Cowboys. Of like, oh, how do we create what do we put on stage that's more than watching people in black outfits move sets, stuff like that. So that became part of how we gave visual candy. For Vampire Cowboys, for years now, we did away with intermission completely, and now we always do a movie in the middle of it, which aren't in the scripts that you buy, but there's always a movie in the middle, so it gives the audience a chance to kind of like mentally back off from the show after a big, act 1 break.
Yeah.
But also still giving them something, some eye candy, some visual candy. Go, oh, this is fun. So, and if they do need to pee, that's the moment to go do it, because it's real. It actually doesn't impact the story at all. If you miss the story about the apple killing the orange, which was our movie in Soul Samurai. And so we do a lot of multimedia. It's mainly because we're also usually influenced. Our media guy he was a main guy over at Pure Art Center, and he did a lot of stuff with Isadora, so he knows a lot about multimedia. And then there's me, who's like, oh, that's really cool that you know how to do it artsy. How do we do it fun? And so it's basically just trying to figure out how to find ways to interact with multimedia in a goofy manner. Which I don't know how you guys are doing. We didn't actually have a lot of multimedia in art production.
Yeah, almost no multimedia really in this production. Mostly it's just puppets and fighting.
Yeah, that's pretty much what we had on the other, mainly because our multimedia guy was busy. So that's how it works. Like, oh, you're busy? I won't put it in there. So.
Other questions? Yeah, please.
So I'm wondering to what extent I would classify this as a super enjoyable play to watch. I agree with what you said about this is one of the most fun things I've seen. And I'm wondering if you've ever gotten any pushback in terms of what you make it's not serious theater. It's lowbrow. Which, I'm wondering, especially if early in your career you got a lot of pushback that you need to be serious.
Yeah, great question. So did you hear that? You want me to restate it?
I didn't hear it.
Great, I will say it. Our audience member said that she also had an amazing time and that it's incredibly enjoyable. And she's wondering if early in your career maybe, or still maybe sometimes, you get any pushback for making things that are basically just like ridiculously entertaining but a little bit lowbrow. Like, do you have people sort of asking you to be more serious?
Oh yeah, I mean, I was about to say, like, I pushback. I mean, I think people would openly roll their eyes at me for like 8 years of my career. Like, I mean, I've only been doing it for 10 years, so my whole career. So I mean, like, and people all, I mean, at this point, people take me a lot more seriously because of the kind of attention we get for Vampire Cowboys. It's kind of hard for people to go, well, they have an audience. They've sold out every show for 7 years, and they keep getting like these amazing reviews. So it took us. We had to kind of prove ourselves that we, basically going, oh, we're not making the show. If you think that we're too silly for you, you don't have to come see our shows. There's plenty of other people in New York that wants to see us. And so that's kind of what we did. And so that kind of attention kind of begat some sort of legitimacy. But man, people were very much like, you really gonna do a show about D&D? you really gonna do a show with vampires in it? Ninjas? Man, come on. And so I got a lot of that throughout my years, but I'm always like, man, you can tell a show about relationships, about, you know, real human relationships, as easy in like your living room as you can in a fantasy set. In a fantasy setting, at least you get to kill some dragons. And the other one, at most, you're gonna, you know, so, you know,
Right.
I'm just going what's most potential to both entertain as well as explore human emotion. And yes, sometimes I do just do something that's like our last show, the show before was Alice in Slashland, and you're like, oh, what was the deeper meaning of that? I'm like, did you have fun? Like that. So there's definitely times when I'm just out to entertain people. But I think that's legitimate. Like when I go to Netflix and start clicking through, I don't always go, what are the Oscar winners? Sometimes like, what's the thing that's gonna make me laugh? Because I need it. And I think that that's a legitimate thing, because I think people forget how hard it is to entertain people in this day and age. Like I think, so yeah.
I
So
mean, one of the things that you and I talked about was that moment that you guys had as a company early on, where you made a conscious decision not to try and appeal to like all of the serious theater goers of New York, right? that you were really, one of the things you guys did that was smart was really identify your audience, which was a niche audience. And in identifying the niche audience, you actually had a wider appeal to more people. And do you find that that's still true for you as a company? Do you feel like has that shifted at all since you guys have sort of found your legitimacy?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, our audience is now a lot more, there's a lot more traditional theater goers that now attend Vampire Cowboys just out of sheer curiosity, because I think when you see us on paper, you're just like, oh, they're telling these stories that are a little too silly. But then we'll start showing up just because but I hear their techniques are really, you know, innovative. Maybe there's something to steal from it. And then when they realize, oh, they're actually telling stories on top of all of it. Because I think, you know, when you start to think of downtown, you start to think, oh, they're either going to be really, really inventive, but their stories are crazy boring because they have no characters, or they're going to be really intimate because they have no money, and that's going to be good, but man, there's no production value to it. And Vampire Cowboys tries to bridge both. We always say we do low budget spectacles, so we're trying to do the biggest, craziest thing possible with the smallest amount of money.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we're still very dedicated to telling that, you know, the boring thing of telling stories and connect to characters, you know. And I think that I mean, I can't, you know, as tell people, man, geeks aren't like, geeks go way back, you know, like I'm a geek, you know. So like, you know, the average people always assume that we only appeal to young people, but man, the stuff that we're referencing are things from the 70s and the 80s, you know, like it's things that we all kind of have a touch. If you have no sense of humor, well, then I don't know, maybe. You know, but if you do have a sense of humor, I think most people do, then I think that there's something to be had in our stuff. But again, yes, I'm not working hard to get this, guys. So,
Yeah, right. Are there any other questions, comments? Oh, we've got some of the cast members who want to ask things. Yeah.
Paige and I actually have a comment.
Great.
Would like to come down because
Yeah, come on down. Come on down. So Paige and Jordan, who are our sisters, who are playing sisters, would like to come down and ask you. I'm going to move.
Hello.
I'm Tilly. She
well,
plays
maybe
Agnes.
not.
Yeah, maybe you're Andrew. So I just wanted to share something with you, as well as the fine folks here, that really contributed to me wanting to be in this show. And I shared this with her when we were in the audition process. I wasn't quite sure if I could do this. I don't know how to fight. I am not dorky. I don't understand D&D. So I was really concerned auditioning for this show. And then a friend of mine posted something on Facebook, which is, what does it say? It's from the OB's 2012, What Off-Broadway Needs Now. And it was something you said, like almost a year ago. Where'd it go? Oh, I gotta find it. I lost it. I'm just gonna, I know you know what you said, but they don't know what you said. Qui had said, what Off-Broadway needs now is Asian actors with no accents, Black actors with British accents, British plays with people of color in roles other than housekeepers, women in lead roles where they don't fawn over any men,
Latino actors in lead roles where they don't have to be downtrodden, gays and lesbians in lead roles where they don't have to cry, South Asian and Middle Eastern actors in lead roles not about terrorism. And thank you for being half Asian, we find ourselves in this weird, like, middle ground of not knowing where we fit in, and we don't understand why we can't just be regular people sometimes in shows.
Yeah, where it doesn't have to be about being
Asian.
and telling an Asian story, which is valid, you know, but and that being plays about families. So like, thank you. That's important to me as an actor to like be in a play about a family, and I get to be in it with my real family, and it's not about like being, you know.
We don't talk about our tiger mother. So we just wanted to say thank you for giving us a beautiful place to be in and to have fun in.
Oh.
Thank you. I love technology. That's so weird. Please, that's awesome. Yeah, you go ahead. What do you want to say? Okay. You want to come down too?
It's still our idea.
Yeah.
We have to do it, Kate Blanchett.
And so it was.
I'm the Robin in the play. That was me. So, Quis, this was kind of fun for us because we're actually really big dorks and we play Evil Gabby and Evil Tina. So it's very ironic because we are probably the dorkiest people in the cast who play D&D, except for maybe Mike. You're pretty dorky too, buddy. But shit's about to get real here. So when we were in rehearsal for the first time looking at scene 9, which is the first time that you meet the evil cheerleaders, I remember saying that to Shira, our director, that, you know, Qui must have gone through this thing. Like, I remember being asked to join super secret clubs and then showing up on location and getting made fun of or having horrible things happen to me. We were Tillies. And also, we have audience members here, too, who were Tillies as well. I just wonder what your experience is with bullying, as some of us really grew up with it. You know, the show really kind of hit home. I know it did for me. What's your experience with that?
Well, I'm a yellow guy who grew up in, Arkansas. So I was like a minority of minorities in my small town, and specifically, I grew up in the projects, and so I was, I was especially dorky. Like I would go, oh, no, I'm dorky, but I thought I was, I self-identified during those days as an African American kid, and so I was super dorky. So I definitely experienced bullying, especially as I got older in like junior high. The one advantage I had over, say, my little brother was the fact that I could fight. So I was able to beat up the bullies that attacked me. But a lot of the experiences that I remember, the secret clubs, here's the initiations, man, all those things happened to me. Like those are very much like, oh, if you give me this, you can be in my club. And I would give it to them, and then they would hit me and then run away. And then later on, I was like, why don't I just hit you back? And that's what I did. But these are like definitely things that, affected me as a small kid. These are the things that affect you before you know to stand up for yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I think that, you have, like, I look at my son right now, who's also Hapa. Like,
yeah,
but I look at him and I'm just like, wow, if someone bullied him, I know he doesn't instinctively know to defend himself. Like I see just that pure innocence, and I'm like, oh wow, because that's what I think bullying does. It takes it away, and it's from a peer. It's not, and I think people don't always realize how impactful that is to people and how they shape your development, because it's a bit of a thief. They're stealing something from you, but it's something real. And for me, it wasn't the same level as it was for my little brother, who for good and bad, he didn't want to learn martial arts like I did as a small kid, because like, I don't want to be Asian. But that also meant that he didn't have the ability to, like, he tried to fight back, because I would just go, oh, just hit him in the face, you'll be fine, when I got older, because we had like a 4-year difference, so I never went to school with him to protect him. And so he would follow my terrible advice, and he would punch him, but he couldn't punch, and he would get beat up, and he would come home, and he didn't want to disappoint me, and, you know, he wouldn't tell me what happened, and it wasn't until, like, you know, like maybe 5 years ago when I was getting married that him and I went out and had drinks, and he just kind of poured his soul to me about how bullying affected him, you know, a level that I had never realized. But all of that to say that it usually impacts how I look at characters and how I look at how I look at that situation, you know, because I think it's, man, I'm kind of happy that when I did get bullied and when my little brother got bullied, it was 1990, because I could at least get away with it, get away from it when I got home. And I look at kids now and go, man, because I was talking to my wife about this, social media, Twittering, it's hard to escape. You know, I hear this, you know, you read these stories about these kids, these kids who, like the girl from Canada who moved out of town, and she couldn't get away from it because that all the Facebooking followed her. And so I go, wow, it's at a different level, because we are so connected, for good and bad. For good, I now know, I never have to show up to high school reunion again, because I know how bad everyone got. But I can see that a lot, which is good. But the bad is, like, when something bad happens, it's hard to shake off. It's harder to shake off. And I think that I'm glad that people, that in this day and age, people are taking it much more seriously. Because, like, I mean, I'm sure you know as much as I do. Like, you get bullied, and your parents would just go, just stand up for yourself, or they would slough it off. Like, this is good, you know, it's good character building.
Yeah.
But man, when it happens every day for years and years, it's not about character. It really is about, you know, it's mental abuse, you know. And so, well, thank you for playing the roles of the cheerleaders. I'm sorry that you have to live on this.
We had fun with it. We were like, finally, it gets to be us. But thank you.
Thanks, you guys.
So I know we're nearing the end of our available time, but I want to give a chance for anybody else who wants to ask anything or say anything about their experience. Yeah, sir.
Yeah, I'll ask this as someone who played his first game of D&D in 1975.
Yeah.
One of the things that is interesting to me as someone who plays the game is the interrelationship between your real character and the characters you choose to play in the game. And I was hoping I could turn that into a really interesting question.
Great. So our audience member said that he first started playing D&D in the mid-70s, and so has a strong familiarity with the game. And is curious to have you talk for a second about that particular resonance that may occur between a person's internal personality and self and what they put into their D&D character.
Well, I mean, you and I talked about this. But, like, you know, the reason why this show is set in 1995, and, you know, I mean, I'm sure that people have their reasons on why. The reason why I said 95 was because that's when I played. I mean, I played D&D during the 90s. And mainly when I was in junior high, like, actually younger than these kids. And so, D&D has this, and it's mainly also because I don't play D&D now, so I had no frame of reference for modern tabletop game playing. So it was a cheat. So I was like, I remember what it was roughly then, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm terrible at looking at stuff on the internet. So I'm just going to use my memory, and people are going to go, that's dramaturgically incorrect. I'm like, someone else will fix it. Like these two smart people here. But as I was telling Ilana, we were doing this when I was, you know, I was playing when I was 12 and 13. And the show is actually based around, the character Chuck is actually based around my best friend Chuck, who was growing up, didn't change his name, who ended up passing away when he was 30 and I was 29. And this plays a little bit of that kind of, the is my wish fulfillment of like, oh, I wish he would have left me alone, because I did lose contact with him as I was growing up in my 20s. So when he passed away, I didn't know him very well. And so, as very much like the monologue states, she's like, oh, I know them as a kid. I remember him in junior high, but I'll never have a chance to know him as an adult. And that's exactly what it was with me and Chuck. I knew him since kindergarten, all the way up to 18. Never got to see him as a young man. But he was an amazing dungeon master. And I will say this because when we were playing when we were 13, it was me, and again, I grew up in a black neighborhood, and so the only white kid was him in my entire neighborhood. The only Asian kid was me. And so our table was obviously not a whole bunch of white dorky kids as you would assume a game of Dungeons & Dragons would usually play. But it was a bunch of kids who was just going through puberty, who was getting interested in girls, and had enemies and getting bullied. And Chuck would always weave those characteristics into the game. Because, you know, you have a bunch of 13-year-old boys that aren't going to readily talk about their feelings to another group of 13-year-old boys. They're like, I feel like this, I like this girl, I wish people would stop messing with me. But Chuck was smart enough to play the game. For one, for him, I think, it made it just more fun. Because we could act, like, it made us emotionally engaged right away. Like, we would start screaming at these, like, made-up characters because we knew who he was talking back. He was putting us in situations that we had just gone through. And he allowed us to work through it. And so when it comes to, you know, like, I was reading the Company One Facebook page, and one of your questions was like, what is the best things you've learned from D&D? And you know, for like, oh, how to devise and game and imagination. I'm like, no, that's par for the course. Everyone says that. But someone wrote, it taught me that you don't have to get along with your friends. And I was like, that's very true. If there's anything, I knew how to fight with my friend and be able to walk away from it and still be buddies. Because we screamed at each other, because we were like, suddenly we were playing each other's bullies, and unfortunately we were also playing each other's love interests as well. But we were going through all that, so it heavily influenced my adolescence. I mean, of course it affected my playwriting, my artistry, and all that, but it allowed me to talk about things that I don't think I would have talked about at all if there wasn't that outlet. Because, you know, tabletop gaming is very different than an online game. You know, like, you know, even when you put on the headphones and you start to kill things with a gun and, you know, Xbox, you know, in Call of Duty, you're not actually talking about your emotions because you're not having to play act anything. You're just like, oh, how's your day? You see that movie? I want to, oh, kill that dude. You know, like, it's a different mentality than when you're actually having to pretend to be other characters. And so that's something that I do love about tabletop gaming. That was a long answer. But.
No, that was great. So I just want to turn you around one more time and take a look at our audience, who's awesome and who's here and thank you for hanging out with us for a little while, Qui. I hope the family is well. I hope everything's going great for you, and we are so glad to have you here with us. So congratulations on a great play.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, everyone, for sticking around.